I'm glad Dr. Kyles suggested this class. It's funny that it pretty much came right on time with what I was talking about with other people and just thinking about to myself, dealing with like code of ethics for our people. I realized that now, well, just in terms of what we consider to be the conscious community, there's not there's no standards on what should or should not be done, what should how you should or shouldn't carry yourself. I mean, that's to me that's a form of it should be a code of ethics on just in that sense. And I'm jumping right into that because I noticed the way things are going right now in terms of lecturers, in terms of the way classes are being taught. It's no longer about the people. It's no longer about upholding the ancestors that came before you. It's really more about how you more or less, get a following going. And, it's not based upon intrinsic value, based on money, how you go about making your money. And something that my father always taught me, back in the day, is it's never really about the money you make. Wealth comes after you do the work. You don't base it around how much money you make. Well, it's not so much, and I'm not saying that you should come into this trying to be broke, but it shouldn't be based on, how great I teach is how much money you give me. And, you should go in and out, day in and day out. The amount of energy you put into anything should be the same. That's just reality. And I think that the way things are going now in terms of, the debates and this and that, my thing is that that's your means of getting a message out. That's your business. But that's becoming pretty much what, as a whole, how lecturers are being based. We go out and it'll be a Hebrew Israelite versus an RBG, or it'll be a Moor versus a Nation of Islam, or it's a bunch of versus stuff, and that's becoming like what just passed Sunday at WrestleMania. It's become pretty much a joke. Whereas learning is based on how much I beat you or something. Yes, brother?
What happened this past Sunday?
Yeah, it was no, I'm saying in terms of like this past Sunday was WrestleMania.
It's a little more like an event than it is a purpose for the event. It's more like entertainment.
Right. And I understand, people, a lot of people's reasonings for supporting the debates consistently is, well, we practice group economics in that sense. And I totally think that if that's what you want to do, if that's your means of practicing it, then that's your business. But don't make that be the sole way that we practice group economics, is to debate one another. Because within those debates, you also are breaking code of ethics. And one of the main code of ethics my father always stressed just in private is that you don't go against each other's foundation. You don't go against other teachers. That's a big no-no, because people have to understand, just because we do things and it might look like it's in a real small environment and no one else is paying attention to it except our own people, it doesn't make a difference who's doing it. Do realize the beast is still paying attention to whatever we do. So if I say something about Noble Drew Ali, or he says something about Marcus Garvey, or he says something about Elijah, or he may say something about my father, Dr. York, other people are paying attention to that. And they look at how we come together and how we are not unified. That's a sense of unification, because if you're paying attention to whites, these covert white supremacist movements, you don't see them creating forums where they're going against Mussolini and Hitler and going against Einstein's ideology and making fun of Stalin. They don't do those things. They may have their differences, But when they come together, they have an enemy, and that's us. Whereas with us, we're supposed to have that common enemy, and that common enemy lets us push whatever differences we have to the side to deal with that common enemy. That's our biggest problem, is that creates a confusion, because all I'm doing is trying to find a means. Because if I'm going against this specific leader, there's a reason behind it. Now, if you want to, show, in some debates, you want to show that, well, this person was not the first to bring this ideology to America, or he may have been taught by a pale Arab, which is fine. That's what you want to do. If that's what if that's your sole reason for it. But if it's just a means to just beat that individual down, and this is one thing I realized too. Some information don't need to be put out in public. And it's not to say we need to sit up here and lie. Just some information does not need to be put out in public like that. That's just, some things are just too much information. We got to learn how to, at some point, reprimand each other and learn that, okay, well, look, if this person is getting out of line, this person needs to be checked. This person is getting a little too far ahead of themselves for just being out there right now. That person needs to fall back for a minute and go back to the lab and rethink their purpose in what this is. Nothing wrong with humbling yourself, because there's way too much ego being thrown around in a lot of these forums, where it's supposed to be about the people, when it's really becoming more about that said individual. And when you don't know how to humble yourself, that becomes your demise. Because the whole purpose of being a teacher, once you have a certain amount of knowledge, is that's when you really are supposed to humble yourself. You realize, like, look, I got this information. This information is a blessing, and I have to treat it as if it's a blessing, not like it's a specific entitlement. And that type of mindset is becoming very few and far in between. And people have to understand something. Before I was able to teach one class, my father made me,
Akila?
Yeah, greetings. I'm here. You all right? You good?
Yeah, brother.
Okay. All right. But, yeah, the whole thing is my father made me learn how to do specific things a certain way before I was able to teach any type of classes at all. Example, the first class I taught was to children. He made me teach children first before I taught adults. And the main thing was, the first thing was humility, and the next thing was children actually ask better questions than adults do. I mean, I noticed that even now when I'm at Dr. Kyle's store for Shemsa Haru every Sunday, and Baba Unk's sons, they ask the best questions out of everybody, and they young teenagers, and it's humbling, because they make you work. Thing is, they make you work for that answer, and we have to have that mindset, is that you have to humble yourself. A lot of situations, and this is not to beat down anybody, and I see Brother Polite doing his thing, but he gets ahead of himself sometimes. And when you don't have someone to reprimand you, and that's my brother, and I love him, and I love Brother Seti. I'm not here to knock down anyone, but certain things do need to be addressed. Some people are leading with ego before they're leading with the purpose and the message for the people. Because if it's about the people, greetings.
Greetings.
All right. Because if it's solely about the message and the people, then certain things wouldn't continue to go on and on and on and on. That's my take on what we should do. That's just one take on what we should do. I have many, but that's one take on what we should do. Is that it needs to be an order of people that can come to an individual and say, "Yo, bro, right now you need to fall back for a minute. You went a little too ahead of yourself in what you said and how you're carrying yourself. because you're not right now a proper representation of the people right now and what you should be doing. And I think that's just one level of what I mean by a code of ethics for our people in terms of consciousness. Does anyone have any questions or what they want to add to it before I go into the next segment or the next part of code of ethics?
Yeah, true indeed, brother. I listen to Brother Polite, and I love him dearly. He makes some good points. But then again, I had to turn him off because I started to feel a bit uncomfortable with his whole demeanor and his whole position and his whole stance on how he was teaching. It became more about himself and his ego. And like I heard one elder say, sometimes some people start mentally masturbating, because they're so full of knowledge, they get beside themselves. And the egos start to take over. So I know what you're saying, brother. I heard Brother Polite before, but then I started feeling uncomfortable because nobody there to check him, nobody there to humble him. But he just goes on and then gets way off base sometimes. Then the ego starts to take over when somebody, in a sense, challenges. So I know what you're saying, brother.
Yeah, and and I think that, and I don't think it's all so much his fault. At the same time, there's nobody, willing to man up and pull him to the side and say, yo, bro, that, you kind of, you getting a little too, far ahead, bro. That's brotherhood. That's brotherhood and that's sisterhood. That's coming to somebody and say, yo, before you dig your own grave, this is what I think you should do. Because I have no problem someone coming to me and I ask people, say, yo, well, what do I need to work on? Was the class good? Was it this? Was it that? And that's not to be insecure. That's me coming to my elders saying, yo, what have I done or what am I doing that I need to work on right now? That's reality. You always need someone that's going to check you. Everyone needs to be checked at some point. There's nothing wrong with being checked, regardless of how old you get, because as a teacher, this is your life. This is lifelong labor of love. You don't do this because you see that sister in the audience and you want her to like you. You got to do this whether it's 1 to 1,000 people there in the audience, because you're there to help people. And, this is not just for just Polite. I see the same thing out of SETI. Again, like I said, I love SETI, but you can't claim certain things and think that people are not watching you and not ready to take you apart. And the next level is that you can't consistently go against other people's teachers and leaders and think like, okay, somebody's waiting in the wings and they're licking their chops and they're saying, oh, this is how he gets down? Okay, let me see how he feels about this. You have to be smart about the moves you make. Because we all are chess pieces. We all, as teachers, we all are chess pieces on this grand board. And when you make false moves, you tend to sacrifice yourself. You tend to checkmate yourself. You got to be right. You got to be right and exact in the means in which you go about doing things. I think with Brother Polite, because he may not be in my father's organization anymore, there's not that pecking order. There's not that group that's going to come to him and say, yo, because Sakina was that person for him that would come to him and say, yo, you need to come down just a bit, because that was, Sakina was pretty much his teacher when he was coming up, in Brooklyn. And now, because he's pretty much by himself, he's pretty much responsible for himself. But at the end of the day, if you've learned certain things, it was still up to you to check yourself. Because if I feel myself getting too ahead of myself, I'm going to fall back for a minute and get my mind together, get my mind right. Roll back, brother. That's the reality. Because you have to realize we're upholding something. You're upholding, and I talked about this with my brother Ahmos at Dr. Kyle's store a couple of weeks ago. I said, look, the reality of it is this: if you're coming as RBG is not just revolutionary but gangster, dead prez slogan. You have Garvey behind you. You have Dr. Khalid behind you. You got John Henry Clark behind you. You have Dr. Ben behind you. These are your ancestors. And so when you make a false move or you make a negative move, you make a bad mistake or you're thinking with ego, you're supposed to remember that these are your ancestors behind you. You got to check yourself because you're a representation of specific people. If I'm who I am, my of course the person behind me, or not even behind me, that's next to me, that's going to be, tap my shoulder, will always be my father, because he made sure before I got too ahead of myself that I had to sit my behind down first. And every move, every word is calculated with precision because you're representing somebody. And even if you're part of Moore Science Temple, if you're running around here, being a clown with it, just do realize that Noble Drew Ali is your ancestor, and regardless of what negative he may have done, which is really irrelevant to what he did to bring some form of information to, in terms of nationality to our people, that is how you should see it. Because that person is the one that says to yourself, like, look, I'm representing this dude. This dude is royalty to millions of people. I got to get my mind and my act right. And I think that just to stay on the topic of consciousness, every organization has something to bring to the table. That's reality. Whether it's certain principles from RBG, from the Pan-African mindset, when we're dealing with group economics, SUSU, when we're dealing with dual citizenship, repatriation, those type of things in terms of Garveyism, that's something you bring to the table, that those are the principles that's going to help save us in America or or in the mother continent. If you're dealing with the Moors, you're dealing with nationality. That's something that also can be brought to the table. If you're dealing with the New Black Panther Party, you're dealing with self-defense. Our kids still need to be protected because they're still getting killed out in the street. That's the bottom line. All of these things are, like in terms of Nuwaupu, we have language, we have the information. All of these things are things that we're supposed to bring to the table, that we are that are needed to help our people in the state that they're in right now. And it's not up to us to go around debasing each other's leaders and trying to find fault, because again, people are watching when we're doing things like this. The beast is the main person watching, and he's sitting around like, wow, I don't have to get involved in them at all. They're destroying each other. All this information is becoming just a big ego trip after a while, and you're not really using it for what the main purpose of it is for. That's the reality of it right now, and that's the bottom line. You have to be able to. The whole thing is, in my book, Code of Ethics, first off, it starts with checking yourself and allowing others to check you and make sure that everyone else doesn't see so many of our weaknesses, but they see our greatness. Does anyone have anything they want to add or any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Based on what's said at the Code of Ethics. Now, excuse me. Just like taking a scripture out the Bible about Cain when he killed his brother, God asked him, "Where's your brother?" He said, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Basically, much how the way you explain, to a degree, we are each other's keepers. But when does it go? And it's kind of a double question, because it goes for men and women. Now, as for like me and you, that's anything I'm doing out of line. You as a brother would come to me and pull me to the side, like, "Hey, Sean, you're doing good, but this right here, this can't fly because this, Now, I was talking to a sister a while ago, and this had something to do with like basically in a way relationships. She was I was telling her that that the reason why we have a lot of problem with our black relationship with our sisters, because some of us brothers don't know how to love. That's an art that's been taken away from us due to our mothers or the women in our life that been mistreating us. And the brother, the singer Tyrese, was saying that some women need to teach men how to love again, because we lost that from our mothers and some of the women in our family. she was halfway agreeing, but she was saying that most women don't have time to actually teach men, was saying how to love. And I basically was saying, well, that's going to be, your downfall, especially in a society today like America. And I'm not trying to get to digress on the whole situation. I guess the question I was asking was, when does the time when you can actually tell me something or check me to a certain degree, and when is a time where you should already know you should know this, brother?
When is it time to do what again? Just to make it short. When is it time to do what?
Okay. When is the time when you have to check a brother or sister or what he or she's doing, and when is the time where you should not go that far to check them, because either they're too far gone or you should already know about it?
When you hear too much of things that are outside of the principles that we, that let's say, for example, if you're part of a specific organization, and this is every organization or ideology has principles. If you're part of a specific principle in and not principle, but ideology or organization, and the person that's representing it is going a little too going outside of it, going outside of those principles. If they're, calling themselves names that, or giving themselves titles that is a little too far for them to even uphold, when everything becomes more about money, when everything is about money, when every move is about money. Again, and like I said before, it's not about us being broke, because it's not about us being broke at all. We're supposed to practice group economics, which is also known as Susu, in order for us to build and really be a nation of power. But when it's all about promoting yourself, and the whole thing is promotion of self, and means you're trying to go in and beyond everybody else, that's when a person has to come to you and say, yo, you getting a little too far ahead of yourself, homie. That's when you got to, pull a person to the side and say, yo, what is your purpose here? Because, the thing is, a lot of times we lose purpose in what we're trying to do. And I think that's the whole thing. When you can, because everyone senses it. And I think some people, because your conscious in your inner self is going to tell you, like, yo, I'm kind of tripping a little bit when I said that, but I said it, so it is what it is. Said he calls himself 7-star general, and the next thing you know, when the sisters, gets on a conference call and ask him, like, yo, when you going to come out here to help the people out, and you're cursing her out on a conference call. And again, this is not to air his situation, but that's when people need, and this, like you asked the question, that's an example of when we got to pull each other to the side as brothers and sisters and say, yo, you shouldn't have done that shit. You shouldn't have done that. That wasn't cool. That's when egos begin to override your purpose. When you feel the need to say, I ain't gonna talk to you. I ain't gonna I don't have to even respect you anymore. That's a perfect example of when someone should have pulled a man to the side even after the conference call and say that wasn't cool, because that's how we can't teach woman as God and you're disrespecting her like that. That's ridiculous. That's sad. When you're, again, with polite helps promote the debates. Aside from Sa'anetta, that's him helping promote those debates, and that's a means of him making money. But when you're using that as a platform to making money, and somewhere in there your teacher, as I sometimes like to say, your sensei is being disrespected by people, not just say, but the Hebrew Israelites are disrespecting them, and you are a product of what just went down, someone should have came to him and say, yo, I think you need to fall back on that, because your people shouldn't have been disrespected like that. It didn't have to even be a Wu-Nuwaupu coming to him. It could have been just someone in the audience saying that wasn't cool the way that went down like that, and the fact that your name is on it, you're associated with it. That's ridiculous. So I think that's a way. That's a sign when it's time to check somebody. And we all get it. We've all been there. You know, for me, when it's time for me to fall back, I know it's time for me to fall back. When someone comes to me and says, "Yo, you need to chill out with what you said or what you've been doing right now," you know, and I'll ask, like, "What do you mean?" And I'll okay, I hear what you're saying. You know, and that's called humility, man. It's all based around humility. But the code of ethics is needed so that other people don't see. The beast doesn't see Rahubat. The beast doesn't see Rahubat. The beast doesn't see exactly what we're doing in terms of disrespect. Like, if I have to address something with you, address a teaching that your teacher may have said, that needs to be behind closed doors and not in public forum. Bottom line, it shouldn't be out there like that. You know, because no teacher deserves to be disrespected. Not my father, not Dr. Clark, not Dr. Ben, not whoever, because all of them are responsible for our creation in some form. Yeah, you follow what I'm saying? That needs to be known. Does anyone have any more questions or comments they want to say?
Yes, brother. As far as you teaching, we as men, as brothers, teaching the women to be gods, how can we do that in a way, especially with a sister who is coming into consciousness or not quite conscious just yet? How can we implement a plan where we can teach these sisters step by step without getting beside ourselves? You know, you're talking about code of ethics, because we do need to teach our black women the knowledge of self and knowledge of self and kind, and teaching them to bringing them back to the level of God. But my question is, a sister who's just coming into the teachings, or just not been taught just yet, but wants to learn, how can we teach her in a way that is not too much for her, but, you know, and in a way that can be within the code of ethics of humility?
You just have to make sure that you have specific tools around her. It doesn't always have to be, because sometimes what we tend to do as brothers, and I've done this before, the first thing you want to teach a woman that she's God, you know, that you were first, mitochondrial DNA, and asexual parthenogenesis. You want to jump right to that. And you're jumping right into something that feeds a person's ego, because it's not so much about how my ego is filled in terms of me teaching her, is how is she responding to this? How is her ego responding to this? Because you have a lot of sisters that will read that, they'll hear that, and they begin to ego trip themselves. So I think the first step is you have to have the right foundation around her. See, a lot of people don't have a foundation no more. They don't know, when it's like, as we go back to, you know, humility, is certain books that just teaches knowledge of self, just, you know, ISIS papers, things like that, certain books by my father that destroys the God complex of the spook God first, like the who is God, God, what is the difference, Rahubat. Those books destroys the spook God concept. You know, and that takes away from a perception of it being a God sitting on, you know, a white man with a big beard sitting somewhere. That's the first step, is that sister has to have foundation first, something that she leans on. And the next step is, do realize there's a cycle that goes in terms of teaching. The first teacher of the woman usually is the man. The first teacher of the children is the women, and that's, you know, the sisters. That needs to still be put in place. That needs to just be accepted and respected, okay? Because both parties need to not get ahead of themselves. You know, it's fine that, because the whole main purpose of teaching the woman of God, and she came first and everything, and to exalt her in a way, is the fact that throughout this system, we've both been oppressed. I didn't oppress you, you didn't oppress me. We were oppressed by an equal oppressor. That was the situation. When I say equal, meaning the same human beings, the same European, the same oppressor. So once she realizes that, that's a foundation. That's something that you teach her. It's very elementary and it's very basic, but people skip over that and they go right into the black book. They go right into actual fact and teach her all this science of anything, but you didn't teach her the basic fundamentals. You still have to have basic fundamentals to lean on, and that's the thing. A lot of us are not having fundamentals. We're just feeding egos. You're feeding egos. A lot of times knowledge will become negative and just feed ego. It's just ego-based for a lot of people, and you just have to take it step by step by step, just certain books to get her to respect the information. You respect it, and she has to learn to respect it as well. You teach her the history of what's been done to us in this society and all across this world. And the next step is to bring her up, because you have to teach that information, man, in degrees. Because a lot of people now will teach their sisters off the bat, you're God, you're better than me, X chromosome compared to Y chromosome, and you run with that. And all you're feeding her is an ego-based information. It becomes ego-based when you don't have a foundation behind it. And the basic foundation behind it is just simple knowledge of self, because knowledge of self is going to get you to humble yourself to that information. It's supposed to always get you to revert back to what brought you back in it, and once you revert back to that will bring you back to the state of humility. It's just like I said, brother, it's just simple books, man. Keep it simple until you get to the black book of, so woman is God, and yes, and this and that. And you teach her that in increments. And still, you being her teacher, you have a right to humble her, because a sister will get an ego problem. We've seen it, and it goes on to this day. And that needs to be done. Because you got to realize we're responsible for bringing her up to a certain point. I've heard this from my father, and I've heard this from other disciples of him, that we are responsible as men to bring her up to equality with us as well. That's reality. And because we're responsible to do this, we're also responsible when she needs to be humbled. That's our job as well. And then at the same time, when she needs to humble us, that should not be a problem either. Because I'm not making this into a man-based, woman-based, patriarchal, matriarchal. This is equality. This is Wu-Nuwaupu. This is equal. So that's a way you go about it. And that's just with just not just teaching the woman, teaching yourself, is that you don't get too ahead of what you've learned. You got to go back to your foundation, go back to the baby state of the information and say, well, look, you came into this with simple scrolls about Christianity to break away from that spook God concept. Does that answer your question, brother?
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what, brother? I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was about to ask a similar question, because I was talking to a sister, and I'm trying to, bring her in a consciousness. And the thing about it was, the first time we was talking, she was kind of on the spiritual side of, of information. She was not exactly conscious, but she knows a little bit than the average so-called, you want to say, Christian. The problem is that every time me and her kind of talk, we kind of get into these debates. And, I want to know, like, when you're bringing a sister into something or you bring her up, is debating common, or debating is kind of letting you know that you're doing something wrong? I'm not saying. Go ahead.
Well, you're going to get resistance from anything because that's their foundation. Of course, you're going to get some form of resistance. But if it's too much debate, then it's just, it's just combativeness.
Right.
That's a problem. If you're supposed to be her teacher and she's combating you with everything you say, then you might just be wasting your time. I understand. I've dealt with sisters where it's like, you teaching them something. Of course, they're going to have questions. Of course, they're going to disagree with certain things you say. Of course, because it's alien information to them at first. until they can relate it to themselves and see where you're coming from. But if it's every time you come in with the information, there's always an argument. Maybe that's her subconscious way of rejecting it.
Mhm.
It shouldn't be, because part of it is that the student is supposed to humble themselves to the teacher. And if the student is not doing that to receive the information, something is making that student rebel and reject it. And if that's the case, brother, then it might be time for you to fall back a little bit, because I would, because I wouldn't. My thing is, I'm not about wasting my time with anybody. We don't have too much time left. It's time to get it together, and too many people are making us waste our time, and we got to get it right.
May I come in?
Go ahead, sister.
Oh, thank you. Peace to y'all. I just wanted to comment since I'm a sister and you asked that question because I'm a debater. I like it, and I think that can be something that draws you two together intimately as well. But I would just say my advice or my 2 cents would be to check like the air, like check the I guess the atmosphere during the debate. What's really going on underneath there? Is it more like an anger thing, or is it more like a playful thing, or so check the air. That's all I would say, because I know that you can use debate in order to learn, in order to teach, and in order to become, build a bond. So
right. That's true.
Yeah, that's like good information right there. Check the air, because even though like he was saying about the whole debating, sometimes it can be combative. But like you said, I actually deal with people who you can tell who's just debating you because they just want to be combatant, and people who want to debate you because they've been holding on to information so long. It's like basically much somebody's telling you something you've been eating for a long time, like a burger. You're breaking down how the burger's bad. It's like you're used to the taste, you're used to eating every day. And somebody tells you that, hey, this is going to give you a heart attack or a stroke one day, it's very hard for you to let go. So, yeah, you're right. And I do actually try to check the environment, I was saying that the atmosphere. When I just know the atmosphere is damp and it's still doing the same thing, it lets me know that I'm either wasting my time or I'm not getting no progress.
Yeah, no, it's good though. No, I think I want to say thank you for the sister that gave that input, because that is a different way to look at it, because sometimes the setting, I think when you're dealing with sisters, sometimes when you're teaching sisters, make sure it's a setting to where she's comfortable, and just to make sure that she doesn't feel threatened, she doesn't feel like it's a force. Because my thing is, I have no problem going back and forth for a while, because then you're hearing different people's perspectives. But if that's all of it, then I may need to fall back and say, okay, are you here to absorb? Are you here to sponge? Or are you here just for another purpose? That's my thing. Yeah, does anyone have any more questions or statements? I think, what I did was I wanted to also go into...
I had a...
Oh.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
go ahead. You good.
It's just a real quick question. Like I said, you already know me, Wepwawet, been wiping for years. But actually for, some of the other African people, people of other black cultures, basically much all still mixed into one, the conscious community. Is most conscious black organizations teaching that women are actually God, or is just a few selective ones, like the Moore Science Temple?
From what I see is I can name some. You got the Osset Order. You have some RBG movements. I mean, because it's kind of hard to not teach that if you're going by historical accounts. Nation Islam, no. Moore Science Temple, some Moors, yeah. It just depends. It depends on who's teaching it. Because you have different factions of Moors. It's not just Noble Drew Ali. You got other ones that teach it, and you have some that don't. I'm just naming them, of course, Nuwaupians, of course, but most now are going into that consciousness. So it's a lot of them, but I think it's a good amount that's teaching that information. And I think everybody, even if they're not coming from that, they acknowledge the divine in woman. It's just a lot of people, a lot of it comes from the man not wanting to just accept, not just want to say woman is God. And it's the thing is that when you say that, this is the thing I want to convey. I want to convey this message. This is very important. When you make that statement, woman is God, you don't want to say it in the context of putting feminine energy over masculine, because that's no longer that's no longer equal. That's something else. That's gender domination. That's almost monotheism to a degree. Okay? If we're supposed to be equal, one gender should not be over the other. See, if I teach that, okay, woman was first, we came through her physically and this and that, that's true indeed. That's truth, because we're coming from mitochondrial DNA and we're coming from parthenogenesis. That's true. But in this day and time, you don't want to teach something to where one gender is dominating the other. You want to teach it to the extent that you're dealing with the masculine principle and you're dealing with the feminine principle, where both are deified at the same time, because you need both to survive. That's the reality. That's the thing that people have to understand, is that, those that teach that, especially my father, he wasn't doing it in the sense of we're putting one over the other, one gender is more important. That's people take that and they run with it, because people, for some reason, a lot of Negroes want an ego trip off of themselves, and that starts to slow us down a bit, But yeah, just wanted to make that statement. I wanted to make that clear.
And I noticed something else. You was talking earlier about Noble Drew Ali, and you were saying earlier about some of the negative things some of our black leaders have done. What exactly negative did Noble Drew Ali do, for him to be criticized to a certain degree?
I don't remember. I don't know personally. I think the whole thing was his teacher. It was a Pale Arab teacher. They were saying, in one debate, Ali Muhammad had exposed that one of his teachers, his teacher was a Pale Arab, but from my understanding, just historical account, one of his main teacher was Deuce Ali, and Deuce Ali was of African descent. Whether Deuce Ali's teacher was a Pale Arab or not, I'm not sure. I think he was. But just to do further research, I'm glad you asked that question. I do more of my research. But in terms of negativity, the thing is, when I do my research on Noble Drew Ali, there's not a lot of information out there as much as it was, let's say, Marcus, as much as it. Go ahead. No, what I'm saying is that if I'm doing a lot of information on Noble Drew in terms of negativity, I don't find a lot of things. I just think that when you're creating a situation like that, you're trying to find ways to win an argument. So you're trying to find ways to undercut and show your point, because that's the whole point of an argument or a debate, is to how strong was your argument over the other person's was. So no, I haven't found that much. I think that's the whole thing that I noticed with what people try to run with, is that, the foundation of his information was coming from a parallel mindset, and I didn't see that. Just from what I know from studying information from Noble Drew Ali and his background stems from Deuce Ali. So, again, he was of African descent. That's one of his teachers. So I didn't see that as a negative as far as I'm concerned. So it's not from what I learned. I didn't see too much. I didn't see too much myself. It may be something that other people may have seen, but I didn't see too much. My thing is that something that I learned from an elder sister very recently is that people get lost in the person and they forget the message. And that's a huge problem. We get caught up in deifications too much, and we forget why. Because people have to realize, just put things in honest perspective. During that time period, you had the height of Jim Crow. You going with Marcus, Noble Drew Ali. This is times where these men came out to help out black people when black people were being killed on a wholesale level. And that's not having any fear. The fact that you're teaching your people something that according to mainstream society, according to the European structure, they're not supposed to know nothing. Black people are supposed to remain stupid. And especially at that time frame, they're coming with information that is a threat to this, to this society. That should be respected above whatever negative you find about that person. That should be more glorified than anything else. That should be the first thing you refer to, is that, man, this man came around during a time when people were being shot just for looking at a white woman crazy, let alone you come with information that's going to free our people, that's going to get them to have self-confidence and do for self. That should be respected amongst anything else. And that's what we, going back to the code of ethics, the respect was lost. The whole thing is that we're starting to disrespect our leaders and disrespect our teachers. And we should not do that. The whole point of my father, if you notice, very early on and throughout his teachings, it wasn't about disrespecting this person's teacher, disrespecting this person's this person's ideology. It was to realize that we're stronger when we come together, when we connect, and when each faction comes together, we're more powerful. In terms of what we can do for our people, because again, every faction and organization has something that they can bring to the table. I don't have anything more important than anybody else. You don't have anything more important than what I have to bring. But together, if we both bring both teachings and both principles together, we can be more powerful. This is very important. People say it and they beat it down to the ground, but this information is extremely important to know, because we got to start putting this into practice. You have to know when you step out of line in terms of respect, you will be checked. That's what a code of ethics is. You going outside of that unwritten rule book of code of ethics, and you need to be checked for that in terms of conscious community and whatnot. Any more questions before I go on to the next segment? All right. Next segment, when I was talking about in terms of code of ethics, was right now the most important thing that we have to start doing is we have to stop our people from, the Jordan Davis's moms, the Trayvon Martin's moms. They have to stop forgiving the killers of their sons. That's a big problem, because it makes you look very apologetic and it makes you look very weak as a whole race of people. See, the oppressor is testing us in so many different ways. They look at us as being very weak right now. And you're very weak as a people if your only response to your people being killed in the street is apologies. There's no responses to anything. Even if it's just protection, you're not even responding correctly. You're not even having a strategy. To me, that should be a part of the code of ethics, is that, number one, we have to come down and we have to sit down at a table and say, how do we respond to something like this? Even if it's not taking one of their sons or daughters, we have to stop showing ourselves in a very submissive light, because everybody's watching us. Every other race knows how to respond correctly to disrespect. Just in terms of the Jews, if you disrespect the proselyte Jew or Hasidic Jew, or you disrespect, their names and disrespect, their culture and what happened to them in the Holocaust, they come out against you. Black people, they accept it and like to apologize. It's like me apologizing for you whooping my ass, which is what we do. And that's ridiculous. Like, how are you making progress if all you're doing is submitting yourself? The first thing, this is the reality, the oppressor doesn't have to do anything to the oppressed, if I have oppressed you to a severe degree, eventually you'll begin to act on that oppression. You'll begin to act on it in so many different ways. First example is, rather than responding on a strategic level in terms of what happened to my child, I get on my hands and knees and I pray about it. That's the first response. That's the first subconscious response to anything as black people is we pray about everything. And I said to everybody, I will not pray with you unless you're going to work with me. If you're not willing to work with me, I'm not praying with you, because that shows what your mindset is. I'm not apologizing or forgiving any person who kills my child in the street and doesn't care about it, because white privilege is going on consistently every day, and we're just sitting around with our heads down, not knowing what to do, looking confused. Okay? There needs to be some form of reprimanding for Negroes being too passive. You understand what I'm saying? That's becoming a problem, because you don't want to look weak in the eyes of your oppressor, because they're not going to let up on you. They're not letting up. They just keep killing us. You got the brother that just got killed in Jasper County again. Okay? And they're not going to let up. And because the thing is, we're becoming afraid. See, the Negro now, their response, male or female, their response to negative behavior being done to them is prayer and fear. Because prayer has now replaced outright fear. I have no problem going around praying and meditating and chanting with you, but we need to put some things into practice afterwards, after or before. And if we're not doing any of those things, then we are acting on the oppressor's actions against us by just groveling on our knees to that white God. That's exactly what you're doing, because you're asking the white God, whether physical or inside your brain, to spare you. Okay? Stop being apologetic for things being done to you. You know, start respecting yourself. One of the main things I learned from going to Dr. Welsing's lecture is having respect for yourself. If I do not respect myself, I will allow the oppressor to continue to oppress my people and continue to disrespect me. When you do not have respect for yourself, you will allow so many things that is done to you to continue to be unchecked. You know, we have organizations that are out here to protect us, and they should be held accountable for that. You know, we got to be able to join with them and say, well, look, what can we do about this situation? What are we going to do about this situation? Not what can we, what is already being done and what else can be implemented. You know, within our black, or you know, within the Nazi Black Sea, within black people, within Nubian people, African people, whatever name you want to use, whatever name makes you feel good, we have to have a code that that keeps us within due bounds. The first thing the first level is just, simple. It's respect. The first foundation is respect for any person. You don't go around disrespecting Asians. You don't go around disrespecting Latinos or whites or Middle Easterns, because you know there's going to be a response to that. It's going to be equal and opposite response. Okay? If you call yourself conscious and your only response to negative things being done to your people is prayer, that is not ma'at, and that is not equality. That's not justice. Part of ma'at is justice. And if you do not adhere to that, that is a problem, because you're not living by the laws of ma'at. You want everything to happen around you and for you, rather than you going about and doing it yourself. That's the problem. You have to get it together. The whole thing comes down to respect for self. Okay? Does anyone have any questions about what has just been said or comments?
Yeah, I actually do have a question on that. You know, just like you were saying about us being disrespected, I started noticing that, you know, us as a black community as a whole, we do let a lot of things leave. Like around here a couple of years ago, one of our gas stations, not some Asian, but some Arab clerk. I think he shot the guy. I don't think the guy attacked him. I think he stole some at the store and he shot him and killed him. And you know, we had some Black Panther members down there for a while. It had a lot of news publicity, you know, for a while. And, you know, I never really liked that story because, you know, a lot of Arabs were very disrespectful for blacks. I remember I was asking in line when he had to call somebody a nigga up in there. And I'm looking around, and a lot of black people really act like, you know, they didn't really pay attention to it. Like, you know, he called him a nigga or whatever. I'm like, you know, this guy right here just basically disrespected our race right in front of us. Because he didn't have to use it. He didn't use nigga, he used nigger. And ever since that day happened, I have never been back to that store. But I noticed, with our people, with Negroes, we'll do anything for a cigarette or a blunt or something like that. And I was letting people know, I said, you know, see, that's the reason why we're never going to be respected, because we'll easily go to them to get something that we can easily go to ourselves. And last time I was talking to my friend, I said, when's the last time we ever had a black convenience store? I actually know two people who actually got a black convenience store. They locally was in our neighborhood right now. I said, when's the last time somebody ever went over there to support them? It seems like we want other races to baby us. And the funny thing is, Asians and Arabs really, I ain't going to say they really don't, but they naturally really just don't come out and say they hate us. But like you're saying, they start seeing that we always get disrespected. So it's just like, you know, a bully was saying on the playground. He disrespects you, somebody else is going to disrespect you, and somebody else is going to disrespect you. We really at the bottom of the food chain when it comes down to respect. Mm-hmm. And like you said, reprimanded. I think that we need somebody to actually come out and let people know that what you're doing, what you're allowing, is going to hurt us a little bit more, even to the point where we got to even call out names. I'm talking about like you were saying earlier, not disrespecting, but call out certain black names. And I'm just going to use him for example. Not saying he's doing something. Let's say if Jesse Jackson was allowing something like that to go on, we need to sit here and say, hey, Jesse, you're allowing this to go on. You're talking about people. We need to pray. We need to do this. That's all fine and dandy, but what time are we going to do some action? You know, and if they don't do it, they're going like, I should not be moved concept, then we need to reprimand them like, hey, listen here, he's our brother, but if he ain't doing, only he's doing is marching and praying and not taking on physical action, we need to push him to the curb for right now and do what we need to do.
That's
true. You know, I think we definitely need to do that. We need to put some of our black leaders, black preachers, black imams, and time out for a while and let them know that we really don't need you. You know, you're good for the purpose. We really don't need you right now. You're hurting us. So I think a lot of black people need to time out.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with you 110%. That goes back to the code of ethics. I think that part of it just goes, but then it goes back to being afraid to check each other. You know. Like this whole talk of, what's his name, Sharpton being a informant, and I'm not surprised by it. I'm sure no one else is. You know, that was like okay, like what else is new? You know, that was kind of funny to me how people are like, wow, like okay, you know, what else did you want? What else do you want to come out? You know, but yeah, just to go back to what you're saying, we have a real, because it's like if you've been disrespected for so long by everybody, eventually you begin to act on that disrespect, and you won't see yourself as being worthy of being respected. So when you see things like that at convenience stores, and you got the Arabs acting an ass and starts, you know, disrespecting our people like that outward, it's normal now to American society to treat the African like he's second class. And because it's been going on for so long, it's a mechanism within our brains, a lot of Negroes' minds, to respond to it in a submissive manner. You know, and that automatically it's a click that goes on. It's like a button that's pushed. The moment you get disrespect, it's like at your job. it's like you might be working a job and you might see a lot of our people that just they keep their head down and they stay submissive when their boss walks around, and you don't know how to, you keep your head down, you don't keep your head up. I understand you're working a job, but that don't mean you have to walk around, as a little child. You still are a man worthy of being respected. You still are a black man. You still the father of all civilizations. So don't forget that because you got to punch a clock. Do what you got to do, handle your job, and go home and take care of your house. But don't allow yourself to be disrespected, because there is a difference between, giving out directions and giving out disrespect to people. And a lot of times we just allow all of it and we don't check any of it. That I have a problem with personally, because my thing is people look at me sometimes in whatever job I work in, they're like, man, this guy walks around like he's this and that, because I know I am. That's not because I carry myself a certain way, so therefore I won't be treated a certain way. That's the bottom line too, is how you carry yourself. And we talked about this before. When you have a group of people that's dressing a certain way, with the pants off the behind, with the dresses and all this and all of that, that's signs of effeminization and signs of homosexuality being manifested, and if that, which is negative, but it's also a sign of a group of people who don't respect themselves, because no other race of people is being marginalized for wearing dresses and skirts the way we are. I don't see Indian people running around. I don't see, Bollywood stars walking around, males wearing dresses. I don't see that in the Latino community. I don't see that in the Asian community. And I damn sure don't see it in the European community. They make sure that they show the African male in a submissive light, that someone who is unworthy of being respected. Every other race is a sub-race of us. And once you realize that, there has to be some form of respect that comes out of your mind. That mechanism of fear and submissiveness and slave mentality at some point slowly starts to get erased when you accept yourself as God and you no longer allow yourself to be disrespected. That's part of it as well. And that still goes back to that code. That code of ethics is respect. Someone should come to you and say, yo, bro, you don't have to allow him to treat you like that. This might sound very minute to some people, but the thing is we have to learn how to start having the same idea. I realized over the years that every black person is not going to come together. That's the bottom line, man. There's too many informants going on. There's too many black devils going around destroying black organizations. It's ridiculous. You just have to have the right people with the same idea and you will become successful. That's part of it as well, is that code, is that we know when it's time to come together and we know when it's time to work together by just certain things that we say to each other, because every other race does it except for us. We just have to start putting that into practice. Does anyone have any more questions or comments?
Yeah, we can.
Whoever, it doesn't matter.
No, I thought it was very interesting what you were saying about this mentality. I just feel like it's a psychosis, like a true mental illness, and I don't know if because I have to meander these things in my mind all the time, but I don't know do you think that there should be more? I mean, okay, on one end, we would want to love our brothers and sisters and embrace them. But on the other end, when people are suffering from this psychosis and they're unwilling to identify that, or they're unwilling to even be open to therapy.
Yeah,
but when you have those people, do you think it would be what's the word? Do you think it would be non-empathetic of us to just begin to shun these people, like, because they're no help to us, right? So they sort of hurt us. Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to answer that. Well, you can do your best to help somebody until they become a hindrance to you. You see what I'm saying? I mean, I can only help you, but for so long until you begin to drain our energy. The thing of our people is we have to be balanced as a people in terms of consciousness. What I mean by that is stability. Because I asked a question about what does it mean to have a stable relationship, and this is still tying into your question. Stable relationship, in my perspective, is no one's draining energy from the other. Both parties are feeding off of one another, and because we're feeding off of one another, we're getting stronger as a people. If I'm coming to somebody and I realize this person literally is a slave in their mind, and they are at least trying to listen, and they're coming back and they want to make more of a change for themselves, then it's not a hindrance to me because I can see the change. But if it's a person that doesn't want to make no change at all, they're all over the place with it. It's disrespect to you, disrespect to themselves. Then it's time to part ways with that type of person, because you can't save everybody. You know, it's people we run into in the hood that is high and drunk, and you're trying to teach them something. I mean, of course, they're in that state, so they're going to be half-assed listening anyway. But you see them you want to help those people because you love your people, but there's people who don't give a damn. They don't care. They've already accepted where they are, and they've submitted to the system, and now they're cooperating with it, and they become a hindrance to you. So at a certain point, you have to accept that, it's not being empathetic. You can only have pity towards a person, but for so long that they don't respect themselves. I have to have a certain amount of respect for myself, and I'm emphasizing this a lot. I have to have a certain amount of respect for myself in order to listen to someone who's giving me an upgrade on life, that's giving me knowledge of self. And a lot of them don't respect themselves, so therefore they start to drain energy from you. They just want to be around you as bloodsuckers. There's people out there, there's family out there that are just bloodsuckers that will just drain your energy dry. You'll be sitting there teaching them. I've been there, sister. Teaching them until you're like, wait a minute, man. Like, you're not listening to me. You're coming back and forth, and you're not. And again, this isn't judging anybody, but you have to see progress. The teacher has to see progress within the student. And a lot of times, as a whole, our people are not making progress. And you have to, at some point, join forces with those who want to see change and want to see progress. A lot of our people, man, they just want to see us go down. They've been suppressed for so long, for really a long time, that they look at movements that are about change and progress within the black community as negatives, as they just Muslims just saying this and saying that. That's the mindset of a lot of our people. And when you are around that for so long, eventually it begins to drain on you. You don't want that. You don't want that. You want to always have a fresh outlook on things that you can bring to the table. So again, sister, it's not. We can only have so much empathy for a person who doesn't want to change for themselves. Because as God, if I'm teaching you, you were here first, you were the ones that was worshipped, and you giving them the whole outlook, and they're just throwing it back in your face, then you're wasting your time. You understand what I'm saying?
I guess, how do we, as a whole, when you're talking about a code of ethics, how do you create a code of ethics with a percentage of the people who are in your culture who just are not, I guess, willing to even participate in something like that? So what I'm saying is, you know how we have we're segregated in so many different ways. I guess what I'm saying is, in what way can we separate ourselves from that?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, no, I get you. You just have to have those with the same idea that are coming together. If it's me, you, and there's 5 other people with the same mindset, and you'll know it, you know, about what they're saying, about what they're doing, then you establish a system among those people. You don't have to have 100 people. You can have 5 people, and within those 5 people is when you establish the code of ethics. That within that group, I mean, even if it's like crime, and I'm just giving you an example, crime families, black crime families did this. You know, it was like unwritten laws. And the black crime families was only like 5 people, 3 people. But within those, you know, within those parameters, they didn't cut each other down. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. They made sure that certain things went along as planned. And that's all we have to do now, sister, is that if it's just 5 of us that create, you know, of course we stand by respect, we stand by group economics, we stand by certain principles, we teach certain foundations to uplift our people, and you know, and those are ethics. You know, we make sure we stay within due bounds. We don't disrespect each other's leaders, each other's teachers. I'm just naming different codes, different principles that can be established with just a small handful of people that has the same idea in the right frame of mind. You have to at some point separate. That's reality. See, we tend to have the Jesus Christ, John the Baptist mindset that you can baptize and save everybody. Everybody's not going to be saved. That's the bottom line. You can't save everybody, man. You just start wasting your time, you know. But yeah, it just takes just at least just a handful of people with the right mindset. You bring something to the table, I bring something to the table. It could just be 5 people, but we have that same idea in place to help ourselves and our people. Does that make sense?
Yes, a lot of sense. Yeah, I got you.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Does anyone have any more questions or comments?
No, I think you basically touched on it. Like when you was talking about all the stuff they got us doing in Hollywood, you know, wearing dresses and all that. And I think Brother Tyreek, and it probably was you was talking about it. He had a show called Gay Coons. Basically, was sitting here saying is this: Hollywood was in the media will acknowledge each and every other race being gay, but notice that when you start seeing like what's the woman's name, Ellen DeGeneres, you know, she's out there, she's dancing, but in a way she's not cooning. You know, I think our biggest thing is don't matter what kind of black people we have. I think our biggest problem is cooning. You know, like I think you posted something on Facebook a long time ago with the brother Terry Crew when they was doing Expendables 2. And for some reason, I don't know why. I guess he's a big funny black guy, and it's okay to be comical, you know, to a degree. But he goes to the premiere, takes off his shirt, and he has a bra on, trying to flex, you know. And I was like,
yeah, I saw that.
Okay, you know, why, bro? Like out of all these big, swole white men, you know, out here, none of them's doing it. You're doing it. You know, it's like you're trying to you're really trying to impress them a little bit more, trying to show your coolness out there. Even some of the black gays, you know, out there, it's like really you want to put them to the side. Like, man, I know it's your lifestyle, but do you really have to act this way in front of the camera? Because not only you're saying you're making fun of yourself, you're making fun of all of us.
Yeah,
you know, like you're saying, code of ethics and respect. And you know, and I think they were saying, like you said, I'm glad you were saying you did a show like this. I hope you upload it, because I think this is something that people need to have, start showing, start listening, start seeing. You know, respect for themselves, because you can really tell when somebody doesn't have respect for you, and it's getting to the point where this is getting into a problem where we're not, our sisters not respecting us, and we're not respecting our sisters. It's getting to the point where our children is not going to respect us, because they see the television was actually showing us, you know, that we can't be respected for no reason. Out of all the things he was saying about us being, you know, our children being killed, you know, us being beaten, us based on forgiving them. You know, we lost respect for ourselves, and I think we need to get that back for sure.
I'm glad you came with that. That was Tower Hat for bringing up the coon factor of ethics. Is that that the act of it is very disrespectful to not just yourself but to your race of people. No other race of people defames themselves like we do. You might go on Telemundo and you see some goofy stuff going on, but they don't outright disrespect themselves. You don't see the men running around with dresses and skirts, and you don't see modern day coons. You don't see that. What they do in terms of Latino culture, they emulate Europeans, but they do it in a way where it's not of a defamation to themselves. Whereas with blacks, we try so hard to fit in with the European structure and the system of the oppressor that we disrespect ourselves. That's a code of ethics. You see someone getting out of line, it's like the drop squad. You got to pull them to the side and be like, look, this is what you're doing, and you're destroying us as image-wise. You're destroying your people. That has to happen. You can't be afraid to do that because, again, that's a representation of you. And if that's a problem for you, I mean, a representation of black people now is becoming Tyler Perry, his movies, because you got to realize people across the world look at black people a certain type of way because the oppressive system designed our images to be projected to everybody else to look a certain way. So they're not going to look at the positives of us because they don't see them. They only see the Tyler Perrys. They only see the negatives. They only see the coons out there, and cooning is becoming an all-time high because you can make a lot of money being a coon. There's no money in teaching black people knowledge of self. There's no, we're not looking for it, but you're not being saved. You know what I'm saying? There's no fund in helping your own. That's a labor of love.